Good evening, everyone. Let's start off our night with our work session. We have this set to go until we're done, but our city council meeting will not start before 6:30 if we do end this portion early. Mary, could I have roll call, please?
Harrington,
Here.
Wason,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Siddick,
Here.
Hermel.
Here.
Item 3 is approval of the agenda. I don't have any changes to represent. Get a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 then is our work session, and we're going to talk tonight about several property tax revisions and implications from the state legislature here this past year. I'll turn it over to Ryan in just a second, but before I do, we have two objectives tonight. Two of the things that we'll talk about, we are going to have some implications in this coming budget, and Ryan put that in the notes. So we're going to be thinking about what we do with the franchise fee, if we make any changes to that, and also how we handle stormwater, which we've all been talking about for the past several months. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the mayor indicated the intent, but I want to just briefly go over that one more time. So the idea tonight is to provide an overview of HF 718. I'm not really qualified to give you a detailed report on that. There's an 8-page summary in the back of your memo, and then if you want more detail, you can certainly dive into the bill itself, which would be available on the state's website. But I think I can give you a good overview of how we think it will impact North Liberty. From there, we'll talk about some other potential revenue sources that are available to the city down the road if the property tax legislation continues to hamper revenue growth. And then we'll talk about a couple of the recommendations that the mayor just previously mentioned, the franchise fee and stormwater. So HF 17 makes numerous changes, more than a few certainly, to not only the property tax system, but various other local government issues. The couple I want to focus on are one, the fact that this law will now combine levies. Up until FY24, there is a laundry list of levies that are available to cities. Some require a referendum, some the city council can just put into action. Most of those are going to be combined into what we have traditionally called the 810 or the general fund levy. There's an implementation of growth tiers that I talked about in the memo. That's probably the biggest impact that we'll have with this legislation. They have expanded or added various exemptions. Two of them, in fact, one for seniors 65 and older, and the other for folks who are in the military or have previously served. And then I want to just touch base on some new timelines and reports that this legislation will require. So what I tried to do in the memo, and I can walk through the calculation if you'd like. I just tried to do it before. I just did do it before the meeting, and it's complicated. And it's outlined in the league's kind of legislative points on what variables we're looking at. So for FY25, we're actually going to look at FY24's taxable value, looking at FY25's taxable value, so that we can determine what the growth rate was. If that growth rate is in one of those tiers, so between 3 and 5.99% or 6% or greater, then there's a reduction multiplier that would be implemented into our current budget. And so what I have projected, and again, I want to stress these are all projections because we don't know any numbers for FY25 yet, but I use projections based on the last few years, and we've had 6% or greater growth in those few years, to try to give you an idea of how this would impact the general fund. And so, in short, in FY25, if we have a 6% or greater increase in our taxable growth, the law will require us to ratchet down that tax levy from 810, the general fund, or they're now calling it the Adjusted City General Fund Levy, or the ACGFL. That would go from 810 to $7.86. If our growth is at 6%. And so what we looked at then is, okay, well, what if at $7.86 versus 810, which we have been at for the last number of years, as long as I've been here and probably longer, the revenue difference collection would be about $280,000. So we'd collect $280,000 less than we would have with that 810. And what I did here was ran this for, again, based on the 6% revenue growth, ran this over the course of 4 years, because that's how long this piece of legislation is effective for. After, in the fourth year, everyone's tax rate, so FY29, everybody in the state of Iowa, all cities go to 810. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts some of the cities that have really high levies right now. In our case, in FY28, and I know I'm jumping around here a lot, so stop me if you have questions, but in FY28, we're projecting a general fund levy of $17.20, or $7.20 roughly. But then in FY29, that automatically goes to back to 810. So it's an interesting piece of the law. Again, that's assuming no other changes happen between now and then. But as I've mentioned in my memo here, we've heard from elected officials at the state that this is step one of a change to property taxes. So in summary then, again, these are projections. Over the course of those 4 years, we would be about $3 million short in revenue over those 3 years. So it ramps up. Year one, we're looking at a $280,000 difference. Year two, about $580. Then it goes to $900. Then it goes to $1.3 million almost in FY28. And each year, that tax rate gets ratcheted down. Now, if the projected growth is less, that tax rate will be reduced by less, if that makes sense. So I think, the struggle we'll have as we're a growing community and trying to, do innovative and fun things for our community, like Centennial Park, or trying to staff a fire department. We have areas that are growing, and we need to continue to plan for that, but it makes it more difficult with these changes. Now, it's not all bleak. One of the advantages, there are several levies that were not impacted, that are not going to be combined. A couple of them we're not using today, in fact. So I've listed those levies out. They're FICA and IPERS and employee benefits. Those are actually two separate levies. We've always referred to them in the past as trust and agency. We use those levies now, but not to their maximum. So we have some availability left, some dollars that could be generated through that levy. We've not used the insurance levy. I don't recall. We may have used it once or twice in my tenure here, but we haven't used it for the last 5, 6, 7 years for sure. And then we have a local emergency management commission levy that we could use. That's a pretty small one, I think. We have in FY 25 here, we're showing about $11,000 on that's what we pay to EMA. When you factor those in, and figure 2 in your memo shows that we could actually leverage those levies to make up the difference in revenue each year for the first 3 years, so through FY 27. In FY 28 is where we start seeing that those levies are no longer keeping up with the ratcheting down of the general fund levy. I'm going to stop right there for a second and make sure I have everyone, because it's even as I talk through this myself, I find myself a little confused. Any questions?
And then your projections here, that's irrespective of any rollback changes.
That's right. So that is actually my next point, so thank you for the segue. So that is just looking at the combined levy and the tiered growth issues. I spoke to the county a couple weeks ago, and they're still working on trying to estimate what the new exemptions will do in terms of the tax levy. So just to make sure I have these numbers correct, so the new exemption for owners aged 65 and older, in addition to the current homestead credit, they would receive in FY25 a $3,250 exemption in FY25, and then a $6,500 exemption on their value in FY26 from there on out. And while when you look at it from one home, that's not a significant amount, but incrementally, as you add all those up, it can certainly add up. Military exemption is at $4,000 starting in FY25. And the difference between these two exemptions that I just mentioned and the traditional homestead exemption is that the state still funds the homestead exemption. These will be funded through a reduction in tax revenue by the local governments. So, to your point, Brian, yes, so those are not included in this projection simply because we're not sure how to project those yet, and that's a problem everywhere in Iowa right now in speaking with other colleagues. And then the other thing not factored in here, again, because we won't know how this is impacted until later this year when the rollback numbers come out. But early estimates are talking about close to 6%, maybe even more of a reduction on that rollback. So I think we're at 54% now, dropping down to potentially 47% in that area. I think I mentioned in here, I know I did in my memo, that the largest reduction in a rollback in the last 2 decades has been about 2.25%. So this would be significantly higher than the largest one in the last couple of decades. So those will most certainly be challenges moving forward. And as we prep for the FY25 budget, we wanted to make sure you all had an understanding of this. Our department heads are aware of it, and as we work on the budgets, they'll know that we have these challenges ahead of us. Any questions on House File 718 that I could answer for you, or try to answer for you?
As far as the reporting goes, maybe you're going to get this in a little while. We've had the ability to influence the property tax rate to offset the tax assessments and to keep property taxes in line or what they would have been. It sounds like we'll also have a lot of leeway in what we can do for our own tax rate to, either protect property tax increases or to generate additional revenues. Are there going to be limitations? Maybe you'll get to this on reporting, or we have to certify this with an open meeting right now and an affirmative vote on that.
Good question. So the last piece that I wanted to just touch on this HF 718 isn't so much a financial piece, at least not for us. What it does is it extends the budget deadline to April 30th. However, we still need to have the budget completed by March 15th because we have to have our budget, what do they call it here? We have to have the report filed with, a report filed with the Department of Management by March 15th that talks about what our tax askings will be for the year. The Department of Management then has to get that to the county, and the county within 5 days, by March 20th, has to compile all the information and send to each property owner or taxpayer within the county by mail a statement for every taxing entity in that person's, that person is paying taxes to, and explain to them what each entity is doing. I don't know how long that report will be. I know I've heard some concern from county folks across the state that the 5 days might be a little difficult. So, we'll work to have that information to our county sooner than that. And previously, when we had a March 15th deadline, most years we had that to the county after that second meeting in February. So we'll do our best to help them with that. The other interesting piece of the legislation here is that we'll continue to have 2 public hearings. So you might recall a few years ago, the state changed the law to require 2 public hearings. I think one of them was called like the maximum levy hearing, and then you had your traditional budget hearing. They have repealed the max levy hearing, but now we have to have, are required to have a separate hearing outlining, basically having the budget prepared and ready for council's consideration. But we have to do this at a meeting where there is no other business scheduled. So it could not be at a regular city council meeting. Now, there's some question out there is, can we have a meeting at 6:15 or 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, the 12th, and then have the regular meeting at 6:30? Some of those questions still need to be vetted. And I know the league's working on that, but it is very clear that it has to be a separate meeting with nothing else on the agenda but this hearing. And then again, if you're interested in more of what that notice has to say that comes out from the county, there's a 9-point checklist in here. I won't go through them all, but it's in the summary on the league document that talks about what needs to be included. There are other pieces to this law that could potentially impact us. For example, if a city's going to borrow money and needs to issue bonds, and they have to do it via an election, it used to be a special election where I think they could do it 4 times a year. Now they're only allowed to do it once a year with the general election. There's some language in here about tax abatement that really doesn't impact us, but cities with development agreements that talk specifically about tax abatement, we always use rebates, or we have, would be impacted here. So with that, I would move on to the next piece of the memo here, unless you want to talk about this some more. Again, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask, anybody had any questions up to this point?
I think it's been clear. The chart helped me tremendously, so I appreciate the work there. And, with the talk at the State House, they're talking about complete abolishment. Now, we're not to that discussion here, and it'd be a waste of time going down that rabbit hole, but that's what they're discussing for next session. So we just need to be prepared and maybe ask some upfront questions of our legislatures. What's the options, and what are the cities going to be left to if that's the direction they're going? League of Cities, I'm sure, will be all over that. I would hope that they'll lead and keep us on the cutting edge of information and lobby with what is taking place so that we have an idea of what's coming maybe before it hits the news.
Yeah, I think they'll continue to be at the Capitol. I think they're, in a lot of cases, they're not heard. There's seems to be less concern about some of the more populous areas in the state than rural, but
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll move on then to talk about some options. So in addition to some of the other, we talked about the levies that could potentially be leveraged that we aren't using now. There's also a levy called capital projects. This one requires a referendum, so a vote of the people. In the previous city I worked for, they had this levy. It was voted on every 10 years. And in their case, they used it for park capital improvements. This could be really used for any capital project deemed by the city council as such, and would generate about $730,000 a year. I'm not suggesting this is something we should put on a ballot anytime soon. I just want to make sure everyone understands the options that are out there. And again, if this is something that we're interested in, it's not something that happens overnight. It's through a referendum. Similarly, there's a local option sales tax option, and some of you have been around long enough to know that we've explored these waters before and have been unsuccessful. I think we've had 2 votes on it, at least in the last 15 years. Both times that it's been defeated. In that time, the law has changed a bit. It used to be that if your city was contiguous to another city, you had to vote as one, or everyone had to vote on it. Now cities are allowed to do it individually. Tiffin is going out for a vote. Is it? Oh, it was today. Okay. I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. In our the other thing is that the funding mechanism here is just bizarre, and it uses some current data. It uses data from 1980, the tax base in 1980. So it's a little unique that way, and it also depends on who in the county, because it's calculated countywide, and so it depends on which cities in the county are collecting the tax, and then it uses that revenue amount and splits it up. So interestingly, right now, I believe Solon, according to the last projection I saw, Solon has a local option sales tax, and I think they collect close to $700,000 a year. If Tiffin is successful, that number will drop significantly, probably by a couple $100,000, even though more money's getting added to the pot. Similarly, let's just say North Liberty went in after Tiffin, as an example. Tiffin's number would drop significantly. Solon would drop again. So poor Solon is kind of getting hit hard here if cities move forward. There's been some talk at the state level about just because we're really one of only a handful of cities in the state that doesn't have the local option sales tax. So one of the thoughts has been, let's just make it statewide. State collects it and divvies it out then. That didn't really get off the ground the last 2 years. I suspect it'll come up again this year. I don't know if it'll get any traction. That's out there as an option if we think at some point we need it. Again, that requires a referendum. The other option that's out there from a revenue standpoint is service charges and fees. As I've noted in here, we've generally, I don't think, have been aggressive in terms of evaluating our fees at the rec center, permitting fees, et cetera. But we also have to be careful especially, when you're looking at if a fee is more than covering a cost, it could be considered a tax. And so we have to make sure that we're not doing that. Generally, at the rec center, for example, we've tried to be at about 60-40, meaning 60% revenues, 40% subsidy from taxes. I've asked the recreation director to look at that a little bit closer this year to see where we're at. In our last projections, we were pretty close to that. But it's an option that's out there, and we should always be looking at that just to make sure we're in line. So the last two, I'd like to spend just a little bit more time on. We have the utility franchise fee. This is a fairly new fee that we started collecting. I think in FY22 was really when it first became effective. In the memo, there are a couple of different figures. One of them shows actual revenues for FY22 and 23. And you can see from 22 to 23, which is the same time period, we jumped up significantly over $100,000 in revenue. We believe that result is due to additional users, but also gas and electric prices increasing. That increases the amount of the 2% tax or franchise fee. One of the things we talked about during the budget process earlier this year was considering an increase in the franchise fee, which would require an ordinance update in some coordination with the utilities to help fund the Centennial Park project. And figure 4 in your memo shows what those revenues would look like annually, again, based on the figures we have in front of us, assuming that a fee would go into place January 1. And that's an arbitrary date. It could go in, if this group is amenable, it could go in whenever you'd like, probably not before January 1st, though. Any questions right now? We'll come back to these two at the end, but I just wanted to give an overview of that if there's any questions on that. If not, we'll move on to the stormwater utility, and this is something we have been talking about for a long time, and the mayor mentioned a couple months, and I have memos going back to 2017 talking about some of this.
It's a few months.
Yeah, it is a few months. And credit to Russ and Clint in the planning department, and before Clint, we had a young lady working for us named Sarah who was helpful as well. But it was a monumental effort to go through and collect a lot of the impervious data through our GIS system. And I'm happy to report, I know Russ is ecstatic that we have that completed. And so what we're proposing is really an industry best practice in terms of stormwater billing. And I hope you got a taste of that based on the spreadsheet that I put, that I attached to it's the last page of your memo that shows what other MS4 cities, essentially growing cities in Iowa that have a lot of construction and runoff, are doing from a stormwater standpoint. You can see that we're behind the times significantly. You can see that even with what we're proposing here as a restructure of the rates, that we would still be, when you look at it from a per capita standpoint, the lowest on the list. So I don't think what we're proposing is certainly out of line. It's consistent in terms of what we're seeing across the state from a billing structure. And I'll just briefly review kind of what we're proposing. And again, we can spend some more dedicated time on this probably at another meeting. Tonight's really just to kind of give you a taste of it. But right now, everyone in the utility gets charged $2 per account. So if you're a large warehouse with hundreds of thousands of feet of concrete, you are charged the same as someone living in a single-family home with a driveway and a rooftop. What we're proposing is a 2-year implementation process of a fee based on equivalent residential unit, or an ERU, and we value that ERU at about what did I say, 3,500 square feet. So a residential home when the system is fully operational would pay $4. A single family, a duplex, a townhome would pay $4 a month. Someone living in a multi-unit or a manufactured home would pay $3 a month, which is 75% of an ERU, and then a mixed-use residential, meaning residential on top of a commercial building, would pay $2.50, or about 62.5% of an ERU. And then from a commercial standpoint, they would pay $4 for the first ERU, and then $1 for each ERU after that. And what we'd be proposing there is for those additional ERUs, a 3-year phase-in process to limit or to lessen the burden on those commercial districts. I was pretty surprised, and maybe you caught this, we were asking cities, what is the highest monthly bill your folks pay? I was kind of flabbergasted. You had folks paying over $1,000, in some case $4,000 or $5,000 for a stormwater bill. That would be a hard pill to swallow.
Per month? Per month?
Yeah. And these are obviously massive businesses, I would imagine, with a ton of concrete. Still, it's pretty hefty. When talking with Altoona, for example, I think Adventureland's bill was close to $5,000 a month. That's a lot of concrete, obviously. In our case, the highest bill after the 3-year period, we're showing at $376, which again is one of the lower ones on the list for a large user. There's a lot of data on here. Our thought process would be to allow you to have a little more time to chew on this, get some feedback from you folks, and then if there's interest, which we're recommending we move forward with some type of change. This change, as you're seeing here, we would look at an ordinance probably in November with a effective date of January 1st. In the meantime, then we would do an education campaign to make folks aware of what the change would look like and who they can contact for questions, and how they can, if they have questions on how big their property is, or, those types of things we can help with. So, in summary, I wanted to touch on the state legislative changes, and I think we did that. We talked about potential revenue options in the future if we are put in a position where we need to leverage those. And then we talked about the franchise fee and the stormwater utility. And really, that's where the future action is how do you want to proceed with that? And again, we can bring additional information forward here as soon as you're ready to talk about it. And then on our end, we are going to start working on the FY25 budget with a positive attitude and hopefully a bright outlook. And hopefully in January, when we meet again, we'll have some good news for you. So I apologize that this was a little bit not exciting news, but it's the cards were dealt now, and we'll move forward. And
So what specific action or guidance do you want from us tonight? And if I can pause real quick, for those of you that are coming in at 6:30, we're wrapping up a work session that started at 6. You're not late. you haven't missed anything. As a matter of fact, we may take a 1 or 2 minute pause between this work session that we're finishing up and what will be a city council meeting. So you haven't missed anything yet.
Well, I guess if there, that's a great question, and I think what we're looking for is their interest to move forward with a franchise fee and increase by 1% in adjusting the stormwater rate structure. And I'm not necessarily saying we need that information tonight, but we would want to make a decision, at least to consider it relatively quickly, so that we could start putting the paperwork together and then ultimately get the campaign, educational campaign.
So it's not necessarily about the numbers yet on either of those. It's a general nod or a shake
Yeah.
on
Yes.
whether we pursue further discussion on that.
I think that's fair, yes.
Okay. So breaking these down, the franchise fees for those of you that were here when this was proposed the first time, is there consensus to talk about this a little bit more? Just a head nod is good. To look at increasing that franchise fee by 1 percentage point. Okay. And the stormwater utility, we've had apparently 5 years worth of discussion, or 6, and same. Is there a general consensus to look at trying to make that fund more manageable?
I would be willing to consider and have conversation. One of the questions I would like staff to come back that I will ask at a later time is looking at a cap. So maybe looking at the large 10 in our district and seeing what that looks like, and if a cap makes sense so that it's not an unlimited ceiling. I'd be more in favor with some data there.
Sure. And if you get a chance, take a look at that. There is I know that spreadsheet's jam-packed full of stuff, but there is we asked other municipalities whether they use a cap. Most do not, but some have one in there. So, but we can certainly bring back some more data on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to know that from the largest 10, with the GIS data that you have.
Yeah,
Just to see what that looks like,
sure.
please.
Do you have what you need
I
then,
think
Ryan?
so. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
bring this back for some more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Without further ado, we'll move on into our regular session now. And item 5 on our agenda is our consent agenda. This is normally a time when we have items that just need to be paid and business as usual. We do have one item that got our attention, and does anyone want to bring that out and vote on that separately, or should we keep it inside of the consent agenda?
Mayor, I would like to bring it out, please.
All right, and to note, this is going to be item 5D that we're bringing out. So let's start there.
Okay. Well, what you saw in your packet was a note from Josiah explaining kind of the change, and I would actually ask Josiah to review that with the group, and then we're happy to take any questions that you might have.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, so change order 2, it's very, very large number. Provided an explanation in the packet. To reiterate, the change comes from from the estimating process before this project went out to bid. We estimate quantities, the contractors bid on those quantities. The method we use to identify the amount of asphalt and pavement replacement work that they bid on was not accurate. It was too low to reflect what the design was. And so as this project was proceeding into construction and staking, and we started looking at what was coming, identified that there might be an issue here. And then obviously looked into this more in detail and identified that this issue with the bid quantities being too low was a real thing. So obviously went through that whole process and basically redid all those estimates to come up with a more accurate number. And unfortunately, with it being low, it means that instead of those numbers being identified when the project was bid, we're adding them essentially at this point to make them correct, I guess, current. And so as noted in here, those numbers are updated. There's new items. We did work with the contractor. They did reduce their costs on a number of these because if their quantities are higher, they will reduce their unit costs, and those are reflected in here. Yeah, the issue was an inaccurate and not a detailed enough review of those quantities when it was put out to bid.
So was the reduction of the total amount of asphalt or the additional that we added on for the miscalculation?
When you said the reduction of the unit costs,
Yep.
they're applying that for everything.
Okay.
All the original stuff plus the additional. Yeah.
Ryan, where does the additional come from?
Well, this is a project that we had slated in a CIP to borrow for. And so like most of our projects, we borrow in arrears because we have the cash on hand. And so we'll have to adjust that. We'll have to adjust that amount when it comes time to borrow.
And to reiterate, I think we all know this, if the quantity had been known in the beginning, the project would have been increased by this amount anyway. So we're catching it now and making sure that it's part of that. So
Maybe more, actually.
may have been more.
May
Yeah.
have been more if they, since we got a discount at this point for a unit price,
Yep.
right? Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Mayor, just publicly, the reason I pull it out and identify it is that again was the largest amount of a change order I've ever seen, and I just didn't feel comfortable bearing it in a voice vote with everything else. So
It's no problem.
that was my reasoning.
No problem. I think it's worth discussion, so I'm glad you did. Do you guys have any other questions about this change order? Is a voice vote still okay for this?
Yes.
Change order.
Unless we can't tell.
Oh, I think that was Greg or Grant.
Is he on there?
Grant, is that okay?
Yes, the voice vote is just fine. You'll, since you pulled it out, you'll need a motion to approve, that option 5D, then you can have I believe you don't yet have a motion for the entire consent agenda.
Correct.
You need both.
Correct. And for those of you in the audience, that's our city attorney. He's homesick right now. Thank you, Grant. All right, so we'll need a motion to consider item 5D first, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on with full item 5 consent agenda. I need a motion to approve this, please.
Mayor, I'll move that motion.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor of that, say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carry. Thank you, Grant. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Josiah. Item 6 then is public comment. This is time reserved for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that's not already on our agenda here tonight. Council cannot necessarily interact with you, but you can please make your comments known if necessary. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment? It's unbelievable. All right. Going once, going twice. I'll close the public comment period. Item 7 is our engineer report. Josiah.
Thank you. Update on a construction project, Penn Meadows Park, which we just talked about. Almost all of the new west side parking lot has now been paved. There's still some permeable pavers to go in, but that lot is essentially, its footprint is now built. The existing east parking lot, which we talked about last meeting, is still closed to the public. That is underway with new islands getting built. And in several weeks, the new 8-foot walk on Penn Street, you'll start to see that coming in along the park frontage. And just to note that as part of that, they're going to tie in the trail that goes through the park. So in a couple of weeks, that portion of the trail will be closed for a number of weeks to make that tie in. There'll be a detour through the middle of the park on the other trails. But that'll happen, like I said, in a couple of weeks. And then quickly, a couple milestones on projects that are in the design phase. Forever Green Road signalization project. That's a project to add new traffic signals at Kansas Avenue and Jones Boulevard. The 50% schematic design work is complete. We've had our owner review meeting with both the city of North Liberty and Coralville to coordinate that. That meeting went well, and now we're going to head towards like the end of October for our next submittal. And again, another meeting with both Coralville and North Liberty. Coralville's involved because they are the south leg of the Kansas Avenue intersection. So we're coordinating the design of our signal with what they have going there in the future. Fox Run Pond Trail, I don't know if I've talked about that one before. That'll build a new trail around the Fox Run Pond Park at the north end of town. Again, 50% design is through on that one, and we're heading towards, again, in October. A lot of these projects we've got going, we've actually got projects bid for, planned for bidding in November, one in December, one in January, one in February. Fox Run Pond Trail is scheduled for December. All these projects would be under construction starting next year in 2024, including West Penn Street, which is on that same track to be bid early next year. That's had a 50% design review, and we're moving ahead with that. That one is a joint project with the Johnson County, between North Liberty and Johnson County to review the design, split the costs, and so those are a couple of quick updates on design projects.
Any questions for Josiah? Thank you, sir. Yep. Ryan, I'll move it over to you, City Administrator report.
Just one item of note. Last week, several members of our team, along with representatives from the Englert Theater, the Iowa City Area Development Group, now referred to as Greater Iowa City, if you saw the press release today, Better Together 2030 and Think Iowa City, presented to the Enhance Iowa Board for the next stage project at Centennial Park. The request was $1 million from that group. They were pretty excited about the project. They oftentimes get to see smaller projects in front of them. So this was a pretty significant project, and it's a significant ask. They have only given $1 million a couple times. So we're hopeful that they'll do the same for us. We anticipated that they would tell us we need to raise more local money before they're willing to make a decision. They love to be, and almost require it, I think, to be last money in. We expected that. That's what they said. So we are going to be working on the capital campaign. Jillian in the Community Relations Office is heading that. And I know one day last week, shortly after an announcement was made on various naming opportunities out there, we had $26,000 raised in a day. So that was a good day. We'll continue to make those pushes and hopefully meet the requirements of the Enhance Iowa Board. We'll be providing them monthly updates. They understand our schedule is to start construction after Blues and Barbecue in 24. So hopefully 2025. And so hopefully they'll be willing to grant us some money when the time comes. And that's what I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Ryan?
That's calendar year 24, fiscal year 25 right now.
Yes. Yeah, I get. Thank you for clarifying that.
Anything else? Okay, I just have a few things. You would have all seen in the packet that we get from our department heads, a couple of noteworthy things, and I just wanted to call them out to the general public. A member of our, we've called it the wastewater treatment plant, I apologize. It's what I still call it anyway, has achieved his Iowa DNR grade 4 operator's license. And across the state of Iowa, there's about 1,100 operators on staff in cities, and he's now one of less than 200 that have this grade 4. So Mark Ferrier in that department, hats off to you for that significant accomplishment, and thank you for your time and effort in there. And also in our our police department, Chuck Tigert is going to be retiring at the end of this month. I had a fabulously wonderful and humorous story to tell Chuck at the holiday party last year. He wasn't there to hear it, but I know Chief was. Chuck was one of the first people I met in the city of North Liberty. I'll leave it at that. It was all for good reasons. It wasn't anything that I provoked, I promise, over 20 years ago. So I'm going to miss him in the department. Right after our last city council meeting, a couple of us attended the ribbon cutting at I-380 and Interstate 80. It was notable for many reasons, but the first time and possibly the last we'll ever do a ribbon cutting on an interstate bridge. But that was great, great turnout for that. Last Friday, the first coffee connection that was in September happened out at City Tractor, and we had a great number of city staff that were out there for that as well. If you have a chance to make those, they're very informal. Early in the mornings, the first Friday of the month. It's a great way to network with businesses and the hosts that are out there. A couple of reminders coming up is that City Council municipal elections are going to be held on November 7th. And if anyone is interested in throwing their hat in the ring, they have until next Thursday to make that official for this council. We do have 3 seats that are going to be on the ballot up here for City Council. And finally, to segue with what Ryan was just talking about in regards to the next stage effort out at Centennial Park, an additional fundraising effort is happening this Friday night with a dinner theater murder mystery of sorts entitled Totally Murdered. So if you haven't yet purchased your tickets, I think you still have time to do that, to make that happen. And finally, I have a proclamation to read for us tonight on our behalf, and this is in regards to the Welcoming Week. Whereas our community success, did you want to say anything beforehand, Micah, or after? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I'm Micah Ariel James, Outreach and Equity Coordinator for the City of North Liberty. Joined here by a couple of folks who have also been a part of the Welcoming Week Planning Committee over the course of the last several months. As you all might recall, last year, North Liberty was part of Welcoming America's Rural Welcoming Initiative, which focuses on helping communities of less than 50,000 be more welcoming and inclusive for immigrants and refugees. I was pleased to reach out to some folks throughout Johnson County to try to revitalize the interest in Welcoming Week countywide, and that took off in a major way. So we had a week's worth of programming that started this past Friday, goes through this upcoming Sunday, when North Liberty will once again do our Neighbors and Flavors event at Rancho House, 12 to 2 o'clock p.m. on Sunday. But yeah, so Welcoming Week is a Welcoming America program. If people want more information about our event or the other events that are going on in town, they can learn more at welcomeicara.org.
Thank you, Micah. Who do you have here with you since they made the trip and sat through a work session?
Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Amy Alice Chastain, Executive Director at Global Ties Iowa.
Thank you, Amy.
Hi, I'm Emily Meister. I'm the Director of Community Impact at United Way of Johnson and Washington Counties.
Thank you for joining us here tonight. All right, without further ado, let me read this proclamation, and then I'll hand it off to you guys. How's that sound?
Thank you.
Okay. Whereas our community success depends on making sure that all feel welcome here, and whereas today new residents and visitors alike are a vital part of our community, bringing fresh perspectives and new ideas, starting businesses, and contributing to the vibrant diversity that we all value, and whereas by working together we can achieve greater prosperity and make our community the kind of place where people from around the world feel valued and want to put down roots. And whereas regardless of where we are born or what we look like, we are North Liberty, united in our efforts to build a stronger community and recognize the contributions that make our community more inclusive to all who call it home. And whereas we seek to come together to build communities where every resident has the opportunity to contribute at his or her best. And whereas Welcoming Week is an annual campaign and celebration to showcase the movement of communities striving to be more welcoming places for all, including immigrants. And whereas during Welcoming Week, we honor the spirit of unity which brings people together across North Liberty, the greater Johnson County area, and the nation. And whereas we encourage our residents to join this movement of communities nationwide by participating in local Welcoming Week events and by demonstrating commitment to our core American values by taking action in the spirit of welcoming. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the City Council of North Liberty, do here recognize September 8th through the 17th, 2023 as Welcoming Week in the City of North Liberty. I will sign this and come out and hand it off to you. How's that sound?
Good. Thank you.
Do you have any additional comments, Micah?
I do not. No.
Okay. You want someone to flash it?
Yes.
Or are you going to do it?
I'll take it.
Okay.
No, you should be in it. Would you mind taking this?
Don't be silly.
Freezing. Are you all cool? I mean, a sweater or something. I'm like, holy cow.
Item 10 are council reports. Council, I know you've been out and about in the community, so what have you been up to?
I'll go first. I just want to thank the Colony family for allowing everyone to cheer on the Hawkeyes and the Cyclones on Saturday. It was a huge event. We had about 1,300 people show up from all over the area in North Liberty, widely attended. And of course, there was a lot of great memories and fun that was had. So thank you so much for our staff for putting that together. And of course, the Colonies for hosting.
Jump right in.
Mayor, I'll go. So I attended the grand opening of the Colony barn the week prior to the Cyhawk game. So appreciate representing council out there at that grand opening. Attended the 8380 opening with most of you. Had the Q3 Better Together 2030 meeting with the board of directors, and I was elected to serve as vice president of the board of directors as the North Liberty representative. So that'll be a 2-year term with that board. So appreciative of that opportunity. Q4's meeting will be here in North Liberty somewhere, and I'll certainly let everybody know where that's going to be. And then, Mayor, you brought up the election. I have filed my reelection petition and am publicly announcing tonight that I will be running for reelection. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Anyone else?
I'm not sure you even saw this yet, but the MPO was working on a bus rapid transit feasibility study on the old Kranich Railroad line, and they're actually going to run the contract through the city of Iowa City just for some logistical reasons, but they're going to really try and get that going, and they hope to talk about it on their September 19th meeting.
Thanks for letting us know about that out loud. Anything else? All right. Item 11 then is our youth council. We have a swearing-in ceremony to be a part of here tonight. You want to come up and join us up here? Those of you that are going to be joining us on this youth council or rejoining us.
All right, so I am pleased to introduce you to the new cohort of North Liberty Youth Council members who are beginning a term that runs September 2023 to August 2024. We have 7 returning members, 3 new members, and we also have 2 vacancies, and we're still accepting applications at northlibertyiowa.org/youth council. We're just going to accept those on a rolling basis until we fill those vacancies. Our 2023-2024 youth counselors are students at Liberty, Clear Creek, and Regina. And what they have in common is a desire to make North Liberty a more welcoming and inclusive place for people of all ages, especially youth. This new cohort will build on the work of the 2022-2023 Youth Council by developing projects focused on sustainability, social and economic justice, youth engagement, mental health, and more. This group has a lot of ideas. We look forward to sharing them with you all in the coming months. So I'll invite our new and returning members to introduce themselves. Just say your name, your grade, and your school. Then we'll do the oath and then get a group photo. So let's do that.
Hi, my name is Leila Strand. I'm a senior at Liberty High School.
Could you also remind us if you're new or returning to this?
I am returning.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Piper Kearney. I'm a returning member and I'm a senior at Liberty this year.
Hi, I'm Megan Quinn. I'm a senior at Liberty and I'm a returning member.
Hi, I'm Montana Duran. I'm a new member from Liberty High School and I'm a junior graduating this year.
Hi, I'm Asher Bonner. I'm a junior at Liberty and I'm a returning member.
Hi, I'm Chase Liptinsky and I'm a returning member and I'm a senior at CCA.
Hi, I'm Olivia Rowling. I am a sophomore at CCA and I'm returning.
Hi, I'm Maneri Jurgens. I am a sophomore at Regina and I am returning.
Hi, my name is McKenna Kelly and I'm a junior at Liberty and I'm a new member.
My name is Kevin and I'm a senior at Liberty High School and I'm also a new member.
Okay. Before I make you turn around, actually, this would be easier if I could talk to you this way. So come around this way. We'll do the oath of office, but I also have a couple of things to challenge you with here. We'll move around a little bit for photos, so stand by for that. For those of you that are returning, I can't express to you my gratitude for putting in the time that you did to start this organization and to continue those efforts. Those of us that are on council, make a commitment for 4 years. Not that you will need to continue that effort after high school, but you will see now why that continuation in this organization will benefit the organization. You will bring institutional knowledge, so we call it, to that. For those of you that are new, I'm terribly excited that you're a part of this as well, because these old folks that have done this once already think they know everything, and you're going to challenge them with some new ideas. So don't be afraid to speak up in that way. So now, if you wouldn't mind lining up rather straight across here, we'll get this oath of office administered and make you official members of our youth council. Why don't you step up here, at least in front of the podium? So I need to be here to be microphoned, and this way your family can take pictures of you, okay? You good, Asher? All right. Do your best to look at me, but also find your parents with their cameras in the audience. See how cross-eyed you can be here in 5 minutes. I please state your name. Oh, sorry, you guys. Let's start with our right hands up. I'm starting. Now repeat after me. Ready? I repeat your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of the office of North Liberty Youth Counselor in North Liberty, Iowa, to the best of my skill and ability, and as to me shall seem to be in the best interest and welfare of the city. You did it. I tried to challenge you with a longer one there. Why don't we bring council up for a regular, good, big group picture with these guys? I know you like to hide in the background.
Do you want us to stand
Yeah,
up
come on.
back
If you want
here?
to stand up back there, you can, or behind these guys. And maybe one more time for one more picture here, you guys, and then you can go back to avoiding what we're saying up here. Everybody find the window back there? We good, parents? All right. Hold on, don't go anywhere. Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
Welcome back. Thank you. All right, you got it. Thanks very much. Which way did we go?
That's probably one of the cooler things you get to do there, Mayor. I agree. That was pretty cool.
I agree. Okay, item 12 is 1 Steinler Way, and item A is our Staff and Planning Commission recommendations, Russ.
Just very briefly, this was a request by Steinler Orthopedic. They just wanted to name the entrance to their development as 1 Steinler Way. Planning Commission accepted the one listed finding, and they recommend approval.
Thank you. Item B is resolution number 2023-98, and this is a resolution authorizing and approving the name of the private street as 1 Steinler Way with the number 1 in Steinler Medical Park subdivision in the city of North Liberty, Johnson County, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions for Russ? Anything? Mary, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Can we have a roll call, please?
You bet. Smith?
Aye.
City?
Aye.
Wason?
Aye.
Harrington?
Aye.
Vermel?
Aye.
Awesome. Item 13 is Sweetwater Lane, much in the same spirit as the last item. Russ, staff?
Very similar. Just on this one, we realized that the street name that was previously approved was too similar to another street we had in the city. So they changed that, and they're requesting for you for Sweetwater Lane. Again, Planning Commission accepted the listed finding and recommends the City Council approve this item.
Thank you, sir. I didn't ask this last time. Any questions for Russ before I move on? Item B then is resolution number 2023-99, and this is a resolution authorizing and approving the name of the private street as Sweetwater Lane in Water Tower Place, Lot 5 in the city of North Liberty, Johnson County, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Mary, roll call, please.
Vermel?
Aye.
Wason?
Aye.
City?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Harrington?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 14 is Pratt Real Estate Management, Inc. zoning map amendment. We do have 2 of them, so this is the smaller of the 2. Item A is public hearing regarding proposed rezoning. If you have any comments in regards to this rezoning, now is the time to address council. Seeing none, I will close public hearing. Item B is applicant presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. John Marner with MMS Consultants representing the developer. Just to express up front, Brandon apologizes. He had a previous commitment that he was unable to make it tonight. With that said, this is a proposal for rezoning from RS9 single family lots to RD10 single family to RD10 zero family lots. As you'll see with the subsequent resolution or ordinance that's on after this item, this is an effort to provide a little different housing type immediately adjacent to Jones Boulevard before it tapers down into the single family RS9 that's to the west and also to the south. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions for John? All right, thank you very much. Russ, staff and planning commission recommendations.
Yes, so this is a similar number of units. The RS9, it was the first RS9 we had in the city, so those do allow for single-family homes on smaller lots. And so the change to RD10 is very minor. It actually only allows for additional 2 units. So it's very minor request. Again, this 80 acres that the Pratt Real Estate Development owns is kind of an island because it, Jones Boulevard to the east, 240th to the north, Penn Street to the south, and the large industrial facility to the west. So a little bit more density towards Jones Boulevard, in staff's opinion, would not be a problem. We did have a good neighbor meeting on July 18th. It was sparsely attended, but we have no formal objections to the request, and the Planning Commission accepted one listed finding and recommends City Council approve this item.
Thanks, Russ. Do you have any questions for Russ? Okay. Item D then is our first consideration of ordinance number 2023-22, and this is an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from RS9 single unit residence district to RD10 2-unit residence district. And could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Mary, could I have a roll call, please?
Harrington.
Aye.
Brunel.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Siddick.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. And item 15 is an additional Pratt Real Estate Management, Inc. zoning map amendment and preliminary subdivision plat, PAD. And this item also has a public hearing attached to it. So item A is public hearing regarding this proposed rezoning and planned area development. Anyone in the audience wishing to make comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I will close public hearing. Item B, John, applicant presentation.
Thank you again. This is a little different type of development. So the effort with this particular piece of ground, I think, was to provide a housing type that is similar in nature to those that you'd find in a condominium association with duplexes and threeplexes and fourplexes. It's private streets for the infrastructure, but there's individual lots for these instead of a condo association. And the primary objective with those individual lots is it allows those individual homeowners to be able to secure financing. They own the piece of ground as opposed to owning a property within a condo association. There's still an association that would own and maintain the private drives, the private utilities, the infrastructure. And there is a mix of housing types on this. They're both duplexes, but the footprint on the outside is a smaller footprint. It's a 2-story home, and then the footprint on the inside is a 1-story home. It's a little bit larger footprint. And I'm available again for any questions if you have any.
Any questions for John?
Is there attention being made to no dead ends here?
There is one dead end at the northeast portion of the property as the drive, but it was too close to there was actually two that we talked about, but what you have to be careful of is the intersection at 240th and Jones. You wouldn't want public streets in that situation to join those two areas too close to the intersection. And so, but it's a private street, and so there's less of a concern. If it were a public street, we'd have issues with cul-de-sacs and things like that. But since we're not doing any of the maintenance or driving through that for the most part, we didn't have an issue with it.
Snow removal is not going to be a problem?
We will not remove snow on this. It'll be private.
Private.
And access to, for the fire department, will that still be
yes,
manageable?
We will. Yep, we will. We do require, and during the review of the site plan, require public access, police, fire, and be able to get in there for water services.
And with dead-end streets, is it typically no parking on both sides? So if a fire engine does end up at the end, they back out with no obstruction?
Yeah. So it's a very small. Actually, I can. It's a very small dead end, so it's not so far enough that the fire department can't back up a little bit and then turn south.
I see.
But that's essentially how it's laid out. It'll have 3 connections to public streets. The street running east-west to the south is a public street, and then 240th to the north is a public street as well.
Thank you, Russ.
Thanks for the question, Counselor. Any other questions for John or for Russ? Actually, I jumped ahead there. John, thank you. We're done.
Thank you.
Russ, officially.
Yeah, the only thing to add is this is a PAD, so we do have a preliminary site plan. So we do get into the layout of how the subdivision will look, and it's also a subdivision plat. The one thing I found interesting here is when you have in the subdivision ordinance, it talks about single family development has to be on a public street. I'm unsure why that is. As you can see with the last zoning related item, I'm open to amending the zoning ordinance. I do appreciate giving people some flexibility if it makes sense. In this case, they wanted a 2-family development, but they own the lots. You know, similar development, if it was condo, as John talked about, on private streets, it would be permitted by right in an RM district. And so I intend to explore a little bit if we can offer some flexibility in the code and not have to go through this process. But it does tie them to this type of development process, which is nice. Because there was a subdivision plat and a preliminary site plan, the Planning Commission had 3 findings. They with those findings, recommend approval of this request.
Any further questions for Russ?
Just to be clear, that's not, I mean, the private streets thing is not the only reason there's a PAD in front
Correct.
of us, right?
Yeah, thank you. It was to do a couple of waivers. One was a lot size in RD10, and then a couple of setback waivers, reducing the front yard setback, reducing the rear yard setback. I would note that the reduction to the front yard setback only occurs on the private streets and not on the public streets. And that's a minimum of 20 feet. We look for a required parking space in the zoning ordinance is 19 feet. So we're always looking for 19 to 20 feet. And you don't want to get too far less than that. We have a few older homes in the city that have that, and they always end up blocking the sidewalk, and that's what we want to prevent. But again, this would be a private development that we wouldn't get into.
Russ, how does the drainage work in the center of that square? Do we know?
Yeah, please, John. Thank you.
Some of those specifics will be worked out during the full construction plan, but it's a little bit hard to see in the southwest corner. There's a storm sewer that runs in the southwestern. It runs between the rear of the southwest. You were probably fine on the one you were on, Russ. In the southwest corner on the interior loop, there's a storm sewer with an intake that would collect all of the drainage within the center portion, and then it would get into the storm sewer system and back out to Eisenhower Boulevard.
So is it a drainage swale to a beehive, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's all of the drainage would be funneled towards that direction. It might not be a very clear, defined, really detailed swale, but generally it all flows towards that one beehive intake and collects it in that. Again, I can't read the lot number. I apologize, but it collects it in that southwest corner and then outlets runs the storm sewer and storm water over to the west to the private drive and then down into the Eisenhower Boulevard storm sewer system.
And into the large.
And eventually into the large stormwater basin. Yes.
Any other questions for us?
My only comment on it is we've been doing this a lot lately, rezoning single family into duplex type housing and stuff. So I just have a little bit of concerns about that, but this still has a pretty significant single family to the south of it. And actually the way this is lined out actually is pretty interesting. So
yeah, this one, it wasn't quite clear what the idea for development was. We talked about assisted living or something like that. I was always concerned about, compatibility considering the homes to the north. I think Brandon at one time talked about the sports complex at this location, and we thought that was a terrible idea. And so we settled on something I thought was a little bit lower density and a lot more compatible with those residences to the north. And so, because it's kind of an island, so to speak, it didn't fit into the overall subdivision. It kind of made this property unique.
Anything else? Item D is first consideration of ordinance number 2023-23, and this is an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from ID Interim Development District and RS9 Single Unit District to RD10 PAD 2-Unit Residence District Planned Area Development, and approving the Planned Area Development Preliminary Plat and waivers pursuant to Chapter 168.053B. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions? Mary, could I have a roll call, please?
Wason.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Siddick.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Ermel.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16 is Scanlon Family LLC zoning map amendment. And item A is also a public hearing regarding proposed rezoning. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make comment about this possible or proposed rezoning? You're here making presentation on behalf of the applicant, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else from the public on comment? I'll close public hearing. Take it away, public or applicant presentation, please.
Thank you. I'm Bob Downer. I'm the attorney for the Scanlon family. there was a similar proposal that came before the council a year ago and was rejected. This represents a modification of that proposal to reduce the density in this, and there would be 2 fewer lots in the subdivision that is proposed here than was proposed the last time this came up. This property is all adjacent to the westerly boundary of the future school site, and it's felt that this would be an appropriate step down from the school to the single-family area to the west, and there's no plan to seek any further down rezoning of the property to the west. One of the things that has motivated this proposal is that the single-family market has decreased substantially, and more demand for duplexes is coming up because of increase in both construction costs and interest rates. And so many people who had been able to purchase single-family residences a few years ago find that this is out of reach at this point because of these factors, and not being able to service as large a loan as they might have previously because of the increase in interest rates. This will be, as I mentioned, adjacent to the proposed school site. We have been working with the school district on a trail system through this entire area, working with the city as well in connection with that. And we feel that this will make a very attractive area for families that have elementary students who would be attending that school, which hopefully will be developed in the near future by the school district. As far as landscaping and matters of that nature are concerned, in the subdivisions that the Scanlons have done in that area, they've exceeded the city requirements in that regard and would commit to do so again. And so if there are any questions on this that anyone has, I'd be happy to attempt to address those.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Downer? Yes, sir.
So I think I asked this last time. So if we split them into a 0 lot to duplexes, what is the cost savings from the regular single-family house?
I don't have a specific number on that. That would be something that the builders would need to speak to. The lots are somewhat larger, but there's no intention to increase the price point beyond what had been talked about previously. I was not here at the time of the last presentation, and I don't have specific numbers on prices and things of that nature.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Downer.
Thank you.
Russ, I'll come back to you for item C, Staff and Planning Commission recommendations.
Okay, just to add, the previous request in 2022 is to RD10. This is to RD8, a little bit larger of a lot. Mr. Downer mentioned 2 lots. So that equates to actually, because they're subdivided, actually 4 units. So the previous request was 26 residences. This would be for 22. The one thing I would note is we've adopted our comprehensive plan since the last item was denied. We have a little bit more clarity. If you recall, the comprehensive plan previously called this entire area residential, which didn't give us a lot of guidance with respect to density. This subject property in the area to the west and to the north is designated urban low intensity on the future land use map. That permits a density of between a range of 3 to 8 units to the acre. RD8 is consistent with that. It's at the higher end of that range. But compatibility is something staff considered, considering the RD10 that's existing just to the southeast, as well as we consider the school to be a higher intensity use. We would expect density and hold the developer to that statement that we would be more compatible with less density single unit dwellings as the development moved to the west to be compatible with Arlington Ridge subdivision. There was a good neighbor meeting on August 22nd. Again, sparsely attended. There's no formal objections to the request. Planning Commission accepted one listed finding and recommends the City Council approve this item.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions for Russ? He had a good explanation in our packet out there. There was a good question asked of a member of this council as well.
So I really appreciated the before and after map.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. Actually, and if it just comes up again, that was very helpful.
Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate that.
I just want to make a comment. While I do agree that there has been a decline in demand, I don't think that the decline in demand has correlated with an increased demand per se for 2-unit residences. I think just overall the decline is a result of the economic conditions and, the current interest rate. And by and large, a person that wants a single family home does not necessarily default to becoming a 2-unit resident buyer per se. People want what they want. And if there is a lack of that particular product over there, we're back to square one. So I think that is one thing just to take into consideration. The other thing I would like to add to that is that there are houses right now that have been built and they're higher end, around between 4 and mid 6s. And some of the feedback received on those properties is that there is a preference not to be surrounded necessarily by a plethora of high density housing. So with that being said, I appreciate the fact that they're going from RD10 to RD8, but there is some concern on my behalf of there already being a large amount of inventory over there of some higher density homes.
Mayor, I would just say the adjustment in the picture that was sent saved me a lot of time because I did have a fair amount of feedback from those in Arlington Ridge until they saw that second piece. I don't have as much pushback here, but I will state to the Scanlon family representative that is here, I will not be in favor of any higher density moving west towards the Hemingway or Berkshire corridor. I'm just one vote, but I'd like that passed along. I agree with Ashley. I'm not a realtor, but I do have a concern that our inventory, like we were many years ago, is rising in multifamily residential at a faster rate than it was back then. And we heard a lot of pushback back then as well. So it'll be interesting to see what how the market shakes out here. I'm more likely to favor this because of the school site. If the school site was not there, I think I would have a different view.
Right. If there are no other comments for Russ, let's move this on to item D so we can have more discussion about that then. Any other questions for Russ? Okay. Item D then is our first consideration of ordinance number 2023-24. And this is an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from RS6 single unit residence district to RD8 2-unit residence district. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to jump in and provide my 2 cents. I don't get to vote on this. I think the diversity in housing stock in a neighborhood has been a goal of our city and council and staff for nearly as long as I've been up here, and you know how long that is. Councilor Smith and Bermel, I understand and agree with you on the need to limit this to the location that it is in. The elementary schools that we have in North Liberty right now do have some higher density housing that does abut it. It provides diversity, it provides options, and I think this is perfectly acceptable and probably very welcome zoning that occurs here just because of the location, to pick up on what you just said. So if I had a voice in this, I would be in favor of this recommendation.
So I know when we went through this the first time, though, the RD10 that's on the south edge of where the school property is. That's why we put that
Correct.
there. And that was, to me, that was my kind of consideration of that effort and stuff. So, and I believe that single-family housing, which would back up into a school, those would probably sell quite well. So I'm not particularly in favor of increasing the density anymore than it is already.
Yes.
This is not in particular to this particular, this statement is not specific to this project, but I have to question with regards to decreasing the plot of the land and allowing for there to be more flexibility. Are we truly transferring that affordability onto the consumer? You know, if we're going to say that each unit itself is going to be, let's just say $450,000, and someone could build a single family home for $450,000, and ultimately there's one beneficiary in that scenario. So I think one of the things that I'm troubled by is that we are going off of the notion of increasing affordability for the consumer, yet we don't necessarily have any guarantee that that's going to translate.
Understand. I don't think I'm having the argument that there's an affordability difference out here in this. I do believe it's just a housing stock option that we have. And to your point earlier in your comments, Counselor, we do have, and Russ put this in his answers or in the packet, permits that have been pulled, housing stock that we do have over the last 10, 15 years. It's pretty consistent in the applications to what we have in inventory out there. So, but to answer your question, Counselor, I don't have any notion that this has anything to do with affordability. It's just another level of housing stock.
I think perhaps I articulated incorrectly. I think that was one of the consensus that in the past we have felt has been a priority for us, and the reason why we've generally been more flexible in our vote per se. So I don't know if that necessarily is the case in this particular scenario, but you know, as we're including more of zoning modifications, I think, you know, we have to also kind of ask ourselves why.
Right. Gotcha.
What's our motivation?
Gotcha.
I just note that everything around this is RS6, correct, Russ?
With the exception of the two-family RD10 to the southeast, yes.
So we're not increasing the density all that much if we approve this. I don't see a problem with this.
And I would just add really quickly, the area that would be east of here and north of the school, that is more of a medium density on our future land use map. And so when we talk about providing different housing options for this overall development, the idea was to have a little bit higher density as you approach North Liberty Road and that lower density product, because it's a large piece of land owned by one landowner, that we don't have a lot of those situations in the city, that you have the lower density to the west and then opportunities for a little bit higher density as you move towards North Liberty Road.
Anything else?
Mayor, I'd just add, the Scanlon family have been wonderful partners to the city. These conversations don't reflect their partnership with the city in any way. These are just hard conversations that the council has on housing stock and affordability. Has nothing to do with that partnership or the great things that they're doing in our community.
Any other questions or comments?
I echo that.
Thank you. All right, Mary, let's do a roll call. Sorry.
Siddick.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Vermel.
Aye.
Wason.
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much, Council, for your comments and consideration here. Item 17 is our street vacation. It's not as fun as it sounds, I promise. Item A is public hearing regarding proposed street vacation. Does anyone have any comments to share about this item? I'll close public hearing. Item B is staff and planning commission recommendations, Russ.
It's pretty straightforward request and just reflects what we pretty much already see out in the field. You can actually see it on this aerial. Fortunate enough to have 2023 aerials. But the Planning Commission accepted 2 listed findings and recommends the City Council approve the vacation. There will be a subsequent public hearing to actually convey the land. So this just takes the formal action of vacating a public right-of-way. So there'll be subsequent actions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Russ?
I guess my only question, and maybe this isn't the time to bring it up because we need to do this regardless, but is the pavement's not going to be pulled up, right?
Correct.
Likely. Is there going to be a barrier at the north end? I mean, I know before the construction fence went up, there were people driving over that area that had been shut off. So I'm just curious. I don't remember if there's landscaping there or what.
No, there'll be I believe the police driveway, the new police driveway will come out there, and there should be a curb on that. Is that correct? That sound right?
I had the same question months ago, Eric. So that's interesting.
I'm sorry. And there's, I believe, if I'm remembering the image right, there's landscaping along that driveway as well.
Okay.
Item C is first consideration of ordinance number 2023-25, and this is an ordinance vacating a portion of the North Front Street, right of way in North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? Mary, could I have a roll call, please?
Smith.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Brumel.
Aye.
Harrington. Aye. Civic.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 18 is zoning ordinance amendments, and item A is public hearing regarding proposed zoning ordinance amendments. Is there anyone in the public wishing to make comment on these proposed amendments? We'll close the public hearing. Item B is staff and planning commission recommendations.
I'm sure one of the best phrases Ryan likes is my zoning ordinance parking lot, which I bring up way too often to him. Is, when I hear things from citizens or developers, I put them in a file of things that I may wish to amend. And so this one's been building over some time, again, with the overall spirit of advancing our zoning ordinance to be kind of a modern document. So it accomplishes a lot of things throughout the code. Again, a couple of the amendments are direct responses to that I have with citizens about being a little bit more flexibility. I think the spirit of all of the changes I brought forward is trying to maintain, I think, the standards that we have in the community, but it's being as flexible as we can. I think I've been part of too many zoning ordinances that just sit in one place and they're not fixed, and you just can't catch up with market trends and things like that. So happy to talk about any of these changes with you, but Planning Commission accepted the one listed finding and recommends the City Council approve this ordinance.
Any questions for us?
Just one quick question. Back down to when the freestanding garages in the storage buildings and things like that. So, conceivably we could get back to those things. So I have a big yard, and if I have a shed over 200 square feet or whatever, then I couldn't have a gazebo later somewhere else. What would be the mechanism then for somebody to just the board of adjustment or?
Well, so, if you wanted something like you had a garage, detached garage, and then you wanted something above 200. So if it's above 200, you'd need a variance or something like that. So
we just do it that way. So
yeah. That section of the code was amended. We'd have requests like, well, we only allowed a garage that was 600, or if you had a larger lot to be bigger, which we amended. I want a workshop, or I want to, and actually it was a specific request. Somebody wanted a pool house in Arlington Ridge. I said, well, the code only allows a garage. And then think about it. It's like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What are we trying to accomplish here? So we'd have some people that would build like a garage, a structure that they wanted to be a workshop. Well, you have to put a garage door in it to make it a garage. And it doesn't have some of these things you just look at and say, that doesn't make sense. And so that was the spirit to come after this, to make some amendments, again, to be, somebody wants to have a pool house or a gazebo that's a little larger than the 200 square feet, they can do it, but we would just limit it to one, so you just don't have several structures. You can still have two additional ones at that smaller range.
So it'll cut a lot of the stuff that would normally have to get a variance for. So, okay. Sounds cool.
I think you'll be seeing Councilor Wason here soon. Sounds like.
Well, we were thinking about landscape, and I was like, I got it.
But it's a helpful question. I think we all run into this question every once in a while. So, All right, bear with me, everybody. And Russ, if you could make these shorter in the future, that would be
I
great.
apologize in advance.
All right, I'm not going to do it in one breath, but we'll do what I can here. Item C is first consideration of ordinance number 2023-26, and this is an ordinance amending chapters 139, 165, 166, 167, 168, 169, and 173 of the North Liberty Code of Ordinances, amending regulations for naming of streets, conditions for construction site plan approval, zoning map amendments, and required comprehensive plan components, adding new and updating definitions, amending certain residential districts and combining the C2A and C2B zoning districts, amending bulk requirements in certain residential and commercial districts, zoning use matrix and zoning use standards, off-street parking regulations, maximum fence height in residential districts, accessory structure standards, and permitted encroachments in required yards. Could I please have a motion for consideration?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other questions other than those that have been provided in written comment? That was great, by the way. Okay. Mary, could I have roll call, please?
Wason.
Aye.
Rommel.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Siddick.
Aye.
Motion carries. Russ, thanks for your work on this.
Thank you.
Item 19 is West Penn Street public improvements, and item A is public hearing regarding the West Street public improvements projects. Now is the time for anyone in the audience wishing to make comment regarding this improvements projects. You're welcome to address council.
Good evening. My name is David Rhyme. I'm from 2515 Swan Lake Road, Northwest, North Liberty. I'm a lifelong farmer, fourth generation farmer. We've been farming in Johnson County and Madison Township for the last 125 years, our family. So we have a proud line of a group of farmers in our family, and we are opposed to changing, or the proposal that you have proposed to expand this road and to kind of move into our property, cut into our property, and for many reasons. But we would like to see that right-of-way kept the same. We have some issues. I have spoken with the attorney and also the engineer of the project. And it's my understanding that the road is going to stay basically exactly where it is, only you're going to expand 4 feet wider of a shoulder and then have a ditch that's not quite as deep and but extend farther. Some issues that we have are the Alliant underground wire that is in the easement of the SIPCO lines that are on our property. If we would move that back 10 feet like you propose, I'm concerned that that fence line is going to be right near or on top of that underground line. I'm also concerned about the SIPCO easement that would be back sloped past the poles, south of the poles. It just doesn't make sense to me. Currently, we have a 25 feet easement with SIPCO, which that project was just a nightmare. I don't know if you have felt any of that, but that was a nightmare anyway to get that all through and figured out. Had a lot of problems with that. So we have been working on that to alleviate the problems with that. And so we have a 25-foot easement now. So if the lines would go down or need to be repaired, so you would take at least 10 feet more of that easement, but you would back slope it. So it seems to me that they're only going to have 15 feet. They're not going to want to work on a sloped ground. So we're going to have 15 foot of easement there for them to put new lines up if they ever have to, or the poles ever go down. They're not going to want to work on sloped ground, is what I understand. Of course, we have problems with our concerns about the tile. being repaired properly. We've had issues with that with Johnson County in the past. Fencing, like I said before, how will that work with that underground wire that's already there? And we're also concerned with surface drainage and how that might change the topography, might change of the ground there. As far as safety, I'm told by the attorney that this is the reason that you wanted to change this road, or Johnson County or whoever decided to do this. And I understand safety issues, but it just doesn't seems like the biggest safety issue with that road is those poles right now. And it seems like you shouldn't be coming further south on those poles. It just doesn't make sense to me. The biggest issue is that giant pole in the corner of James and F28. And I don't know if anybody's been there, but there's a huge site issue there. If the road's going to have to do something, it should be further north there. Then you have to get halfway out onto the road before you can see to the west there. So there's issues there. So I just wanted to voice our opinions. Not sure why we came to North Liberty, but that's we are part of Madison Township and Johnson County, but we're told that you are kind of heading this project up. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
So, so I guess those are my concerns. We would like to say keep the road right of way the way it is right now, and I'd encourage you just not to rubber stamp this project into maybe think about it. So appreciate listening.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Anyone else out in the public wishing to make additional comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing on this. Item B is resolution number 2023-100, and this is a resolution granting approval to proceed with a public improvement, the West Penn Street Improvement Project. And could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
And this allows us to have discussion as a council at this point. Grant, would you mind jumping in here and helping us understand a little bit of Mr. Rhymes' issues and also the true implications?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I'm on speakerphone. There's a little bit of delay.
That's okay. Hey, can you pause 1 second? Can you pause? I'm sorry, Grant, can you pause 1 second? Can you folks hear him okay out in the audience? We have some speak.
Grant, test us out
I
here.
will do my best to project.
Yes, you're great now. Thank you. Please proceed.
All right. I will speak from the diaphragm to the best of my ability here. City Council entered into a 2080 agreement, City of North Liberty, with Johnson County last year for the improvement of West Penn Street and a required step for eminent domain to be on the table. It does not mean that we necessarily would have to move forward with eminent domain, but it allows us to do so, and this is a necessary requirement for the hearing tonight is necessary for ag land and similar acquisitions. So I was pleased to see Mr. Rhyme here. I've spoken with Mr. Rhyme, all of the property owners by phone and by letter. And I actually met Mr. Rhyme and his brother with staff after he provided us with a letter and identified some of his concerns. I believe that our city engineer is going to be able to speak to some of the specific concerns with respect to safety and the direction of the road and such. But the basic gist of it is that this is a small taking of 10 feet on either side of the roadway to allow the modernization and application of best practices for turning this chip-sealed old road into a paved roadway with safer ditches, shoulders, and all the other safety features that you would expect. After having we had years of complaints for the status of this road and the condition that it's in. So I will pause there, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions about the process.
I don't think anyone has any questions
I
about
don't-
the process. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Grant.
Okay. And then, Josiah, I know you have the list of issues that Mr. Rhyme set forth. I will say that other issues we've heard from, we've spoken with all the property owners. To the west of the Rhymes is Mr. Niederheiser. He was concerned that an initial drawing showed that one of his trees might be affected. We confirmed that that was no longer the case. To the northwest, Mr. and Mrs. Dorman have raised no objection. I've spoken with the Raricks, who I believe Clint is there tonight, and through their attorney, and the EC Farm property to the east through their attorney, and they've raised no objections. They are, of course, interested in making sure that they're treated fairly. And so the process here is that we will get an appraisal for those properties that are unique and use an estimate based on those appraisals for properties that are similar. So of the 6 properties that are affected, we anticipate needing 4 appraisals, and we'll be able to use 2 estimates for the valuation of the remaining parcels. We've received objections from the Rhymes. I have not received objection from any other parties.
Grant, could you clarify one thing about the existing right-of-way versus what this project will do?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I should mention that too. The drawings that you have in front of you or in the packet show a fee acquisition, and so right now this is county roadway, and the county roadway is held by easement. Our acquisition exhibits here show acquiring it in fee, or meaning buying the whole shebang. We will probably not actually do that. We will probably be purchasing only easements for land that is in the county. And so the actual acquired strip is the thin strip along the edge of the exhibits that you're going to see. We can whittle that down later. These exhibits show only what it would look like if we bought the difference from the existing roadway. Specifically, we want to buy an easement along the south of the property where the Rhymes are, because of the SIPCO properties or the SIPCO easement there. We don't want to pay $1 zillion to relocate transmission lines, and so we've worked with SIPCO, and through their attorneys have reached an agreement for what an easement sharing agreement might look like. And I believe we are at a point where we are certain that we will not have any impact with the Alliant lines either. And I think Josiah could probably speak more to there. And I realize, Mayor, now that I cut you off, did I answer your question, or did I just go in the wrong direction?
Oh, you sort of did. I think that's an important distinction here, is that we're not looking to acquire the roadway out there, but as part of this process, this is a county and city project that the county has asked us to lead and to engineer in there. The project itself just needs, in some instances, 1,700 additional square feet of space out there to constitute what would be mostly the existing right-of-way with these little bits of extra width. How accurate is that description?
I think that's entirely accurate. The extra width is going to be ditch that you see on there. And Josiah, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. I will turn this over to Josiah in a minute. Is there anything else that you wanted to jump on right now, Grant?
No, sir. I think that's it. I'm happy to answer questions, though.
Okay. Thank you. Stand by. Josiah, can you help us out, though?
Yeah. So I've talked to the designer. I've looked through these plans a number of times and talked with Michael Pentecost, the street superintendent. I can confirm the purpose of the project, this joint project with the county, is due to maintenance issues with this roadway over the last several years. It's been basically rebuilt twice in the last 7 years to rebuild the pavement condition, and it's a safety project. And as was noted, the road is it's an old county road. It's seeing a lot more traffic The pavement is very crowned in the middle. The shoulders are very narrow and very steep through here. All those were reasons that this project has been on the CIP and was moved up to this year. To some of the specifics, the plan for this roadway is to build a road similar to what you'd see today on North Liberty Road, the rural section of North Liberty Road between Liberty High School around the curve to like Penn Meadows Park, that rural section. That's essentially what we'd be building out there, proposing to build. That is entirely appropriate. Similar in scope, that project took an old road, similar with chip seal and no ditches and issues with curves, to build what you see today, which is much more safety oriented. It has the required shoulder widths, both paved and gravel shoulders, and it improves the ditches and makes them less steep. So I think all of those reasons and goals are accurate of why this project is being built. The alignment here, I mean, if you've seen on this road or been out there, this is a dead straight road for miles and miles. So, as Grant noted, as Mr. Rame noted, there's been discussions, and on our end, we've actually looked at pushing this road out further north away from the Rame property. And we've actually made those adjustments up to about 7 feet. And we feel that is the limit of where we're starting to compromise safety if we start moving the road around. One of the reasons is there's a drainage culvert through here, which kind of fixes us in on that alignment. There's also an intersection, which you mentioned to the west, the James Avenue and West Penn Street intersection. If we start moving the road more and more north, we are now essentially either skewing that intersection, or we're going to need to move the entire intersection and shift it north as well, which means additional project, additional rebuilding of James Avenue north and south, and Penn Street to the west. So there are some constraints, right, between what's out there and also providing a roadway that is consistent with what you see today. So the speeds are relatively high out there. It's posted 45 miles per hour. And just to the west, it changes to 55. There is a expectation that if you're traveling a road like that, there's not all of a sudden across one property a wiggle and a movement. At those speeds and at this traffic level, we would follow these SUDAS design standards, and so we cannot just move the road abruptly, so to speak. Those minimum radiuses are well over 1,000 feet, and it takes a long time to get the road from one alignment moved over onto another and then back in a relatively short distance. To my review of this, I think the design that's out there balances a bunch of factors, more than just what one impact might be. We're balancing 6 properties, the alignment, the safety factors, the ditches, and the grading. So I'm comfortable that what is laid out is appropriate to meet all those maintenance and safety and improvement factors. I think there was a mention here of the Alliant line and the fence. My understanding is that some of that Alliant line was located and some of it's I think in the field at this point. And our intent is to verify that after the crop is out. We've been in coordination with all the utilities, which is Alliant, SIPCO, South Slope. We would adjust that fencing if needed, if we find it's in a spot that it's not expected to be. So that when we relocate that fence for the roadway project, that would need to be considered. We wouldn't stick it on top of Alliant's line. Topography and drainage and the SIPCO poles. I think Grant mentioned that there's a 25-foot easement out there that SIPCO owns, and we'd be looking to obtain an additional 10-foot, just a 10-foot increment of that for the roadway easement, and that is for the drainage and the ditches. Like I said, the roadway widens, but also the ditches are very steep. And so that is a safety issue because if you do go off the road and they're steep, you're gonna tip, as opposed to having something more gradual. So that back slope does widen out. If you could imagine, you have a new road, more shallower ditches, so they're going to come back a bit more to the outside, and that's primarily what is in that 10-foot easement is just the grading for that ditch. We've been in contact with SIPCO and have reviewed this with them, and to date they are on board with the designs we have around their poles. So, I may not have hit every question or concern, but
Just going to ask one more here, real quick. In regards to the Rhymes property, it's a total net gain of 0.35 acres, but it's a long stretch and it's a significant portion of this property. Did I hear one of you say that this is an additional 7 feet that is needed to add on to what is otherwise the existing roadway, or is that some amount less than 7 feet?
I think you're true that.
I'm sorry. Go sorry.
The easement would be 10. I was just pointing out that we have looked at moving the road, shifting it, and we've shifted it up to about 7 feet, which would still meet our design requirements and lessen that impact some.
And you're saying 10 feet from the current edge of the roadway, not from the edge of the SIPCO easement, right? Maybe both on one side, but we're not going farther into the field than the SIPCO easement is.
We are not. The SIPCO easement goes 25 feet into the field. This roadway easement for that ditch maintenance would be the first 10.
Okay.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be
There
impacted.
will also be a 5-foot temporary construction easement.
Is that going to affect crops?
Yes, it very likely would. And so there's a formula for that that would have to deal with compaction, and they get paid a percentage of lost yield, and that gets rated out over 5 years. We typically pay that in a lump sum.
Okay.
But long term, would there be loss of cropland?
Can you speak into the microphone? Oh, he heard you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're farming into the SIPCO easement right now. So I think, yes, there's probably some strip of land here that's likely going to be a ditch that's because they're farming right up to the ditch, and the ditches are getting wider, right?
Yeah, they are getting wider in some portion of the property. Some of the property is very nearly at the right of way today, but that 10-foot roadway easement, as laid out here, you'd provide new field fence and put it at the back of that 10-foot roadway easement. So the existing field fence today would move in 10 feet because that is the permanent roadway easement through here.
And with coordination of Alliant to assure that they're able to do future repairs without him having to rip up fence down the road for their repair needs, correct? I think that's one of his concerns.
That's what we were just talking about, right?
Yep.
Was coordinating that with Alliant Energy and having them verify the location of where that is today.
Right.
Just to be clear, we own the easement. We still farm the easement. It's still our property. The 10-foot that.
The full 25-foot SIPCO easement.
Yeah, we still farm that, so we still own that property.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you go all the way to the road.
away from us. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that'd be the 10 feet.
Okay.
Correct.
Marilyn, only other question I would have would be tile repair. So that was one of David's concerns. So how long does a landowner have post construction to bring any issues that they see with, seeing a tile issue or tile
5
repair?
years.
5 years?
Yep.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yes, 5 years.
Okay.
And just for clarification, this is the similar situation you'd see on all these plats for all the properties that are bordering the project, the 10-foot and the 5-foot temporary construction easement.
Do you guys have any other questions for Grant or Josiah right now? This is a rather unique process that we're going through, and familiar territory with some acquisitions here for us, but not for these folks in the audience.
And you, Josiah, you have been coordinating with SIPCO.
Correct.
And they're comfortable with the plans. They don't see any need to change what they're doing out there at this point, as far as you know.
Correct.
I have, Eric, yes.
Okay.
In particular was the concern about grading around the poles and getting that information in front of them.
Ashley?
I just, just a
1 second.
quick request to, if you don't mind, just reiterating and clarifying, what are the implications if we don't do this?
If you don't obtain the easement,
Well, we have a 2080 agreement with the county that says we're going to take the lead on this project. And so if we decide not to move forward with the project, we would need to go back to the drawing board and work with the county to find out what that means.
yeah, I mean, the design is. Go ahead, Grant. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say there'd have to be another design, or there would be some discussions and additional design work. I think what that would be beats the heck out of me.
And I guess my response would be, we do have these design standards that we designed to, and that's what this is, and what that comes out based on the type of roadway, the rural section, the traffic, the shoulder widths, the safe fore slopes and back slopes of the ditch. So I think similar to Grant, we'd be back to the drawing board, because otherwise we'd say, well, okay, we're going to build you a road which is very steep and narrow, and then we're back to where we started.
This design point we got here with the aid of the county, so that their engineers and their staff have weighed in on this design, and so both county and city staff recommended. This of course resolution is just authorizing acquisition by eminent domain if needed, but there will be another resolution to establish the value of those properties. And once that's done, then we'll have to go back to the county. If we approve a number, then they have to approve a number, and there are more additional steps. This is just the first thing we have to do.
Could I just maybe articulate on your question briefly? I don't think we would propose to build a road that doesn't meet the standard. So I think I'd want to visit a little bit with Michael and Josiah about that, but I don't think we would. I think we'd probably continue to try to get by with what it is now. But I can't imagine us proposing to build a road that doesn't meet the standard we set for all of our roads in the community.
So there. Mr. Rim, you had a question earlier?
I was just wondering, further up the road, there's curb and gutter that doesn't seem like it took as much right of way. Has that ever been an option, or?
I don't know how best to answer that. Grant, were you able to hear that question?
Yeah, we already have a curb shoulders at that point, is my understanding, on the east side of the project.
To the east, right? That's
Right.
to the east, yeah.
There was no extended right of way there at that point, was there?
There's also there's curb and gutter and intakes, so there's no ditches. That width for that stormwater drainage down behind the street is no longer in consideration there. So
But you didn't have to widen the right of way there, correct?
for curb and gutter and storm, it did not require it. Yeah.
Require that. So you could.
But this wouldn't be that.
But that's an option. That would be an option. Keep the right of way the same. because that's lots of space there.
Our public comment period is over, I think.
I'm sorry?
Public hearing was over, he said.
Public hearing. It's okay, Grant. I'm allowing some discussion for some clarity here.
Yeah, so I guess the concept of this project was not to convert it into a urban section with
No.
curb and gutter and, parkway grading and things like that and storm sewer. So that would be a different animal altogether.
Right, and there are a lot of other implications with that. And to be clear, this is not city-owned roadway out there. This is county-owned roadway that we are leading to assist inside of this 2080 agreement as well. So our curb and gutter drains into existing stormwater inside of the city's system. So by doing that out here would be adding on to that capacity and potentially redesigning it for that capacity. So they're not the same in that way. Does anybody have any other questions for Josiah or Grant? Okay, and to reiterate, and I'm probably not going to do a great job of reiterating this, Grant, this is the beginning phase of what will be hopefully a mutually arrived upon agreement with property owners. This is in place for us to basically set the schedule, and it allows continued dialogue to go on with an end at some point in mind. This avenue may not be pursued, but it allows us to keep timing in place.
I think you did a great job.
All right. I won't be doing your job anytime soon, rest assured. All right. We have moved and seconded for consideration this resolution number. Any other comments or consideration? Mary, I'll ask for roll call, please.
Harrington. Aye. Siddig.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Smith.
Nay.
Motion carries 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Grant, thank you for your help, and Josiah as well. And for all of you coming tonight, thank you for being here and participating in this with us and asking those questions. Item 20 is West Side Fire Station, and item A here is a public hearing regarding the West Side Fire Station project. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment on this item, now is your time. Seeing none, I will close public hearing. Item B is a resolution number 2023-101, a resolution granting approval to proceed with a public improvement, the West Side Fire Station project. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions on this? Tracy, Mary, roll call, please.
Siddig.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item C is resolution number 2023-102, and this is a resolution establishing fair market value and just compensation for the acquisition of certain property for the West Side Fire Station project. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions on this item? Mary, roll call, please.
Wason.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Siddig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 21 is our assessment resolution, and this is resolution number 2023-103, a resolution assessing amounts owed to the city of North Liberty, Iowa to individual property taxes. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Mary, roll call, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Siddig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 22 is the Preserve Part 3A Final Plat, and Item A, Resolution 2023-104, a resolution approving the final plat for the Preserve Part 3A in North Liberty, Iowa. Motion for consideration, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Mary, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Siddig.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. And finally, item 23 is Enhance Iowa Community Attraction and Tourism Grant. This is resolution number 2023-105, and a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to sign, execute, and submit application and associated documents for the Enhance Iowa Community Attraction and Tourism Program. Give a motion for consideration, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on this one? Mary, roll call, please.
Wason.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 24 is anything old business to rehash. Item 25 is new business.
Just one quick
sir.
thing. I know we talked about the wastewater treatment plant. Just also the other thing is they just replaced some of the original membranes, which were expected to last like
10 years.
10 years. And so they've made it this far just because they've taken such good care of them and actually upgraded.
We still have 2 in operation.
So
That's
So we're
outstanding.
just,
We're a case study.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Drew and his team are pretty, some might call it anal. I would call it,
Steadfast.
yeah, dedicated.
conscientious.
Somewhat apropos.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 26 then is a closed session. I'll read what this is. Pursuant to Chapter 21.5 of the Iowa Code, the City Council may go into closed session to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate where premature disclosure could reasonably be expected to increase the price the government body would have to pay for that property or reduce the price the government body would receive for that property. Grant, is our topic covered in this agenda item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it is.
Thank you. We will go into closed session right now.
I'd make a motion that we go into closed session.
I'm sorry, I
second.
can't just,
Need a vote.
I just can't do that. Yeah, your counsel caught me on that one, Grant. It's been moved and seconded. Voice vote sufficient, or do we need roll call?
Needs 4 out of 5.
Have roll call, please, Mary.
Smith.
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Brumell.
Aye.
We are in closed session.